Hi there, it's Brad Turville here, and welcome to this week's episode of Turville TV. Coming to you every week at Thursday, 12 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time, talking all things business, finance, and investing. And I've got a special one for you this week. It's come up a couple of times in the past week. It's a concept and an idea that I've spoken about for many years that I don't think is spoken about that much in business. And it's around the concept of what type of business you're in and how that's serving you and how that is playing in to your future goals and targets and what you want to achieve. And is your business and the way you are conducting it and acting helping you move towards achieving and knowing you're moving towards being able to achieve what it is that you want, and not getting to a future destination, so getting to a certain age or getting to a certain financial level and realizing you are now in a position, or the things that you are now receiving are not what you expected or what you wanted. That's not what we want. We want things to play out how you plan. And yes, it's always a bumpy road, but I think having an understanding of what we're going to look at today is going to be quite important and might be a new and interesting distinction for you. So the topic is around the idea of, are you in a cash flow business or are you in an asset business? Okay, you might actually be in both. There can be businesses that are cash flow and asset, but in the small to medium size business space, businesses tend to be, or I tend to see businesses that one or the other. And what is interesting is some businesses, the actual business is an asset or a cash flow business, but the owner that's running it, in SME size businesses, the owner tends to be the manager as well. They are not aware of what business they are in, or they are acting, let's say, like they're building an asset, whereas they really have a cash flow business. And it's understanding, is this what I want? Am I able to change it to something different? And or what's the best approach for me going forward based on where I want to take the business? And so that's going to help with your journey and with your planning, because in business, there's a million different ideas you can entertain. Do we want to grow big? Do we want to grow small? Do we want to be products and service? Do we want to be a product? Do we just want to be in service? Do we want to be in this industry? Do we want to be in that industry? Do we want to grow over time and be in multiple industries? Do I want a big team? Do I want a small team? Do I want the team in the office or the factory with me? Or do I want an offshore team? Do we produce the product here? Do we produce it overseas? Do we sell it in Aussie dollars? Do we sell it international? Do we sell it in Australia? Do we sell it to anywhere? I could go on forever. There's so many different decisions. Not all of them are right. Not all of them are wrong. In fact, sometimes it's not a right or a wrong. It's what you want, or it's around your values and beliefs and your mission in the business. And sometimes it's your gut feel on, I think this is where we should go and where we should focus. But having some other understandings of an overarching strategy can be important. I think I'm gonna jump into it now, because I think starting to talk through and explain the topic for today, a cash flow business versus an asset business, it's easier to explain the concept through ideas and examples. So let's jump in, and I'll give you a bit of an overview here on what we're talking about. So a cash flow business is a business that produces strong cash flows. Okay, so it's highly profitable, but it's also turning those profits into cash. Okay, that's another training in its own right, but there is a difference between profit and cash. And so if you're in business, you might understand yourself that you are profitable, and at the end of the year when you do some reporting, you might see, well, we made $100,000 profit for the year, but why don't we have $100,000 in the bank? Why is there only $8,000 in the bank, but our profit is $100,000? It's because you're not converting that or converting it quick enough into cash. And so a cash flow business is a profitable business that's turning the cash over really quick. And what I mean by turning cash over is when you send out an invoice, it's being paid quick. It's not paid in 3 months, or it's not paid in 100 days. It's getting paid the same day, or you're paid up front, or it's paid, let's say, within 14 days. And so as you grow and scale, your invoices are getting paid quick. That is one of the keys, and that should be an objective for every business, is for you to get paid quick. But it's also highly profitable, which means there's more coming in than there is going out. That's a cash flow business. That's a simple concept, okay? An asset business is where you are investing in building assets and building the asset value or the valuation of your business. So an example of that might be, you might not have high profitability because you're investing a lot of that back into growing the business. So you might want to be building, one of the assets in your business might be your team. You want to build a high performing team that could run this business really well. Well, to do that, you need to invest in team, in culture, in all the services that go around the team, such as training, such as their offices, such as their experience, performance review, so on and so forth. So there's a cost. So that will reduce profitability, but build a team asset. Other assets can be intellectual property, like trademarks and patents and copyrights. Other assets can be physical assets, like desks and computers, and all the way up to equipment, CNC machines, earth moving equipment, cranes. So you're investing a lot in building the asset. Or perhaps you might be a SaaS or a technology business where you're building out a particular platform or particular technology that's proprietary to you. So it's your intellectual property, but you're building this asset, which over time you can then license or sell subscriptions to that asset, or you can sell the actual whole business or the whole asset to another business that might want to buy it to plug it into their business, or have it as a value add or a new product stream, or whatever the strategic deal looks like there. But you're actually building an asset. You're not focusing on the cash flows. And so part of the interesting distinction here around cash flow business and asset business is a cash flow business is going to produce strong cash flows. And generally what happens is the owner of that business is going to take a large chunk of those cash flows personally into their personal bank account and spend it personally. And a strong asset business, the owners are either paid a market wage or below market. This is a generalization, but the reason they're doing that is because they don't want to take all the cash. They want to keep putting it back in the business to build the asset and build it. A distinction here is, you might be a cash flow business model, but you might not be running it like a cash flow business. You might be running it like an asset business, whereby instead of taking the cash flows, you're reinvesting them to build the asset. But you might not actually be building the asset. You might just be burning cash. You might be trying to build, or you might be doing a poor job of it, and cash is being burnt, but the asset isn't really being built, or you're investing it in the wrong areas that just isn't going to realize a big gain. Because in an asset business, you make the gain when you exit. Okay, you either step out of the business and the team buys it, or you sell to a competitor, or you sell to private equity or venture capital, you list the company, or you sell to a listed company. That's when you really make your big gain. In a cash flow business, you're making your gains every year. So you're not going to have the bigger mega exit. Generally in cash flow businesses, they tend to be smaller, highly profitable, and you're able to take bigger cash flows every year from it. But you can't always have your cake and eat it too. The main businesses that tend to become quite strong in asset and cash flow tend to be technology type businesses. In the early days, they're building it like an asset business. When the asset is built, they can either then exit and make the cash, or they can then flick to a cash flow model whereby the business will now make really strong profits and cash flows because it's technology. It can be everywhere around the world. It doesn't need to sleep. It's not reliant on a large human team like an accounting or an architect, or a call center, or a business model like that. And so it's able to sell multiple subscriptions or enterprise level of subscriptions, and being much more creative. That's understanding that business model. If you look at, let's say, a smaller law firm, well, they're more likely going to be a cash flow type model. They can charge quite a high hourly rate. If they work from a smaller office and they keep their overheads quite trim and they have a smaller team, they're able to be quite profitable. As long as they can stay on top of getting paid, then they're going to have strong cash flows. And so perhaps the model for them is, well, I don't want to grow a team. That's just not part of my plan and vision. I like what I've got, but how do I still build wealth over time? Because I'm not going to get that big exit. When I sell, maybe in 10, 20, 30 years time, I might get a dollar for dollar of fees. So if they turn over $400,000 per year, the business might sell for $400,000. It's not going to sell for a multiple of 10 or 20 or some unicorn level of valuation, like we see in tech and SaaS and brands and that sort of space. Versus an asset business, there might be little to take, and even if there is a dividend policy, it might not be actioned, very little if ever, because the grand plan is to do the listing or do the big sell down the line, which is where you'll make the big windfall. So a cash flow business is a business where it's profitable. It's generally highly profitable. I'm going to throw numbers in there, say greater than 25% profitability. If you're a very small business, it's just you're a service-based business, it might be just you and an admin or a support person. You're in an industry where you can charge a decent hourly rate, like professional services, then it might be higher. It might be up to 50 or 60% profitability, but there's going to be other restrictions, like the business is reliant on you, it's reliant on your time, but the trade-off is you can generate quite high profits. And if you get paid up front, or you're very regimented with your accounts receivable process and your clients pay you quickly, then you're going to have very strong cash flows. The question that you need to have is, what do I do with those cash flows? Okay, so in corporate finance, they tend to look at three areas. Number one is what are the financing decisions we're going to make in this business. Number two is what are the investing decisions we're going to make. And number three is what are the dividend or the paying out or paying back to the shareholders and owners of the business look like. So financing, investing, and giving cash back or distributions out to the owners. Corporate finance is generally talked about in bigger business, but I still think this concept applies to small business, because if you look at, well, what are the financing decisions we're going to make? Financing is, do we need to get a bank loan? Do we bring in new equity or business owners that are going to contribute money to the business? Do we take out some sort of debt financing or a convertible note or mezzanine finance or anything like that? Do we need to do that to fund our growth? Well, if you don't really want to grow and you're happy with where you're at, or you do want to grow, but you can see through referrals and some marketing and speaking and partnerships that you have in place, you're going to hit that target in a couple of years anyway, then perhaps in your business model, there are no financing decisions. You don't need any of that type of financing. So that decision's off the table. Question number 2 is around investing. So when I say investing in a business, I mean, what new assets do we want to invest in? Are we building out team? Are we building out culture? Do we need a big office? Do we need to fit out the office with, offices and carpets and property, plant, and equipment and computers and desks and chairs and so on? Or do we need to invest in assets such as, I'm leasing some machinery at the moment. Do I look to invest in and buy that machinery? So instead of paying someone else for it, we own it and can utilize the value for it and depreciate it and so on. Well, if you're on a cash flow business model, then that might not be a big priority for you. Taking the strong cash flows you got in the business and investing it in assets, well, that may not be part of your vision and part of your business plan. So that comes down to the third decision, which is, well, how much do we pay out to you as the owner? And if the business has got strong cash flows, if you're paying yourself, let's say $150,000 a year as a wage, and there's still another $200,000 in the bank account, well, the opportunity cost of having it sit there that you're not going to do anything with because you are on top of all of your bills, you've got strong cash flows, you're not bringing on new team members or investing in marketing or product development or R&D, or you need a big office or any of that. The third idea there in corporate finance is that you pay it out to the owners. And the strategy behind a cash flow business is that if you're not building it as an asset, why not entertain the idea of pulling that cash out from the business, obviously in a tax effective manner, but pulling it out of the business and investing it personally within your personal family or group or personal group of entities, investing it in assets that are going to grow and pay out distributions over time. Okay, so I just introduced a new concept here, which is the business has got strong cash flows versus a business that's building its own assets. The idea I'm throwing out there is, what if you were to take cash flows from your business? Because if you've got a cash flow business, you're not growing an asset in the business. But with those cash flows, what if you were to invest them personally? You might put it in superannuation that's invested in a range of diversified investments. You might want to invest it in property. You might want to invest it in ETFs. You might want to invest it in bonds. You might want to invest it in some small equity funds. There's a number of ideas there that you should work with your financial advisors on. But if the business is not going to generate and grow the asset, what if you take it and personally build the wealth? I know this sort of sounds obvious, but I don't see it happening that often. Okay, and so if I speak to anyone and the goal is always, well, I want to build wealth. It might be business wealth, it might be personal wealth, it might be both. But if your business is not going to be the vehicle or the mechanism to build that asset wealth, then take the cash flows and invest them not in business assets, but in investment assets. Work with your financial advisor. And if you're working with the financial advisor saying, here's what I'm starting with, and I can see over the next 20 years, on top of the wage I take to fund our family and lifestyle and everything that we want, I'm probably going to have an extra $100,000 a year that I want to invest to build personal wealth. They can help you plan out and decide on where would be the best places to invest that. So when you get to that future point when you want to get out of the business, you've built yourself a massive nest egg, as opposed to relying on the business to sell for a big price to get the nest egg. Okay, I hope you pick up on the distinction that I'm talking about here, but this is really important. I'm an accountant, but I've done a lot of work with professional services, and I've got a lot of accounting mates, and I've got a lot of accounting firms that I actually consult to on practice management and business development. And the smaller firms get this wrong. Okay, they think they're building something that can sell for a massive value, whereas what may be a better strategy based on the strategy that they're currently executing is to pull the cash flows and just invest in building personal assets. Because if they're going to keep it as a smaller business, they're going to struggle to sell it for a big figure. Okay, let's hypothetically say the accounting firm that does lots of individual tax returns. They're generally not valued quite high. let's say it's a small business and it's heavily reliant on you as the owner of that accounting firm. Well, that's now a big risk, and that makes it difficult to sell and has a lower valuation. And as a small business, smaller businesses are generally valued at a lower multiple of revenue or of profit, however you're looking at it. So just those indicators alone are going to tell you that you're not going to get a massive value if the business looks like how it looks like right now in 10 or 20 years time, but it is strong in cash flows. Okay, so you should take responsibility for how you're going to act and the processes you're going to put in place over time. And if it makes sense for you to build your own personal wealth assets via a strong cash flow business, that might be the best strategy for you. I'm not sure. This isn't financial advice. I'm just showing some new modern ideas and different ideas and perspectives that maybe you haven't seen before. Because this is important to me, because I've seen a lot of business owners get to their 50s or 60s in regards to their age. So they get to their late 50s years old or in the 60s years old, and they're struggling to sell the business, or they're struggling to sell it in a time frame, or they can't sell it for the figure that they want, or the time it's going to take to sell it for what they want isn't going to work for them. Or a big one is unplanned events happen. The GFC, COVID, you get ill, someone passes away, you need to care for someone. Unplanned events happen to all of us and happen quite a lot. And so that can derail things. I see a lot of business owners, lots, just close their doors. I know it sounds crazy, but they get to a point and it's too hard, or it's going to take too long, or it's just not whatever. However they've come up with their decision, they literally just say, we'll close the doors, that's it, see you later, it's game over. So there's actually no asset sale at that point in time, which means if they haven't built their wealth over time, then, well, they're now up the creek, right? In this particular situation. Another thing I see in a lot of, especially smaller businesses and especially service-based businesses, is that they say that their business is their super fund. Okay, meaning, well, I'm not contributing a lot to super because, you know, I want it all for my lifestyle. And that means they're relying on the business selling for a larger number at a future point in time, because they haven't properly built personal wealth along that journey. And so if you look at, it may have actually been last week's video on TurvilleTV, or the week before, I looked at compound interest. Even just looking at the power of a cash flow, you know, investing on a cash flow basis over time, it's going to far you know, the equivalent asset sale that you would need at that future point compared to a compound strategy is an enormous figure. The question is that actually attainable? And number two, hypothetically, let's say it is, and other businesses in the industry have done it. Do you actually want to do it, and are you capable of doing it? It's going to be a lot of hard work. I'm just showing the case here on cash flow business, and another way you could look at executing that type of business model. Cool. Now let's flick to an asset type business. So an asset type business could be a technology business where a lot of it is being invested in building a business that is going to have a strong asset value that can be sold and is saleable. Other businesses that play in this space might be e-commerce type businesses, or product type businesses, okay, or businesses that have built out their intellectual property that's then licensed, or it's put into some type of website or online portal where subscriptions can be sold and people can access it to utilize a tool or ongoing training or something of that nature. And so asset businesses tend to be the businesses that are selling for higher valuations. So I personally would say some service-based businesses can become asset businesses when they get to a point where the business isn't that reliant on the owner, it's got a marketing engine looking after existing clients and attracting new clients. It's got an operations and a delivery team that are doing the doing, and they're doing it very well. They've got a strong brand. You know, they might have built out a presence online, offline, maybe both. They might have multiple offices or factories or shops around Australia. They might actually also own the land that they can lease to themselves. They have a super strong team. You know, other businesses would love to have a team like they have a team, and not only a team, but they have a super strong culture. So some of those things are tangible. You know, it's like a, you know, it's like a product. Some of them are non-tangible, like the culture. Okay, I can't pick up the culture, but there is enormous benefits in having a super strong culture. It's going to attract good people. It's going to retain good people. Clients are going to like to work with you. There's going to be efficiency gains, productivity, just having fun. Okay. A mentor taught me years ago that when he would start talking to coaching clients, a question he would ask is, when did you stop having fun in business? I thought that was really good, but I digress. So an asset business is where it's built on foundations where this business is becoming very saleable. Okay, it's implementing some of the important factors, not reliant on the owner. It's got marketing and sales and delivery engines. It's at a certain size. If they slow down potentially on growth, or once they hit certain milestones around building assets, then they can slow down investment in those areas, which will lead to increased profitability. And on the basis that you can turn over cash and you've got quite a strong cash conversion cycle, then not only have you now got an asset business, but you've also got a cash flow business, which makes the sale of it even more attractive, because not only are the assets in the business very strong, but it's also producing super strong cash flows. That's now very attractive. And when you get to a certain size, and you generally need quite a lot of assets to get to a certain size, let's say greater than, let's say $5 million a year profits, or even more, even $5 to $10 million a year profit. So that we're talking a decent sized business here. Listed companies and private equity companies are going to be more interested in you. Okay, if they can see a business generating those level of profits where it's not heavily reliant on the owner, that is a solid investment for them. And as a bit of a generalization, they'll probably be looking to invest, as long as it plays into their investment strategy and depending on your business model and so on. It's going to put you into a different league, as opposed to a smaller business. You generally have to go to a business broker. They'll come up with a valuation which will be at a lower fee and lower multiple. It'll have to be shopped around. The type of people buying that business are generally going to be smaller. They might have the cash. They might be tie kickers. They might be wanting to screw you on price. So look, they've all got their pros and cons. The last piece I want to touch on here that ties it all together is, what is your target? So what is it that you want? And then reflect on your business and your business model and where you want to take that business. Okay. And is it going to allow you to hit your targets that you want? I believe the business should be there to serve you. Okay. And the business is a vehicle to what you want to achieve. Okay, you're not in the business for the sake of being in business. Okay, you're not running your own shop or looking to get into business, whether you start from scratch or you buy business, or you're currently a partner somewhere, or an owner, or someone that could break off and take some client and buy some clients and start your own thing. What's that going to do for you? And people generally say there's three things they want. They want financial freedom, freedom of time, and freedom of mind. But that doesn't always play out. A lot of the time I see, well, you haven't got the freedom of mind because the business is all consuming for you. You haven't got freedom of time because you used to work on a wage and work 40 hours a week, go home, get your super, get work cover, get long service leave, get annual leave, get sick leave. Now you're doing 60, 70 hours a week. And the financial freedom, where you used to earn, $150,000 a year, plus super, and you could take holidays and get paid, and now you're paying yourself 70 grand a year, plus you're working these massive hours. This is a bit of an extreme example here, but I do see things like this quite a lot. So the question is, what is the target that you want to hit? Look forward, look into the future. What is it that you want? And based on my business model and how I want to run that business, what are the things that I should be doing? Okay, should I follow the cash flow model that I spoke about? Is that going to suit how I want to run the business and how I want my personal life to look? Or do I want to grow a big asset business and understand it's going to take a lot of time, stress? You're going to have to involve others, build a team. And then is that model realistic, and is it achievable, and have others done it within my sector or in my industry? Still doesn't mean it's not doable, but excuse me, if you can see that, well, within my industry, these tend to be how the businesses grow, and when they sell, they tend to look like this, and this is the valuation that they get, but they're strong from a cash flow perspective. Or there might be learning in there that, well, they're not strong from a cash flow perspective because they run the business like this. So I'm going to implement some ideas around running a business, following some certain policies and strategies that's going to allow it to be a cash flow business, and I'm going to run it like that. And I acknowledge and expect not to sell it for an enormous figure at a future point in time, but I'm going to build wealth along the way. Or you are going to pay yourself under market wage right now. You're going to reinvest a lot of it. You're probably going to bring on some additional risk, and you're going to focus on building an asset business. And the type of business that you've got, other people have built strong asset businesses, and there's a market out there to sell them, and to sell them for a multiple that's going to help you get the number and the figure that you want at that future point in time. So a couple of different ideas that's probably different from previous episodes of TurvilleTV. Probably not the sort of things that you always talk about with your accountant or your financial advisor, or with your business coach or the experts that help you in your business. But I think it's an important consideration. I was talking with an accountant earlier in the week who's about to go out on his own, and he has got, still got 6 months before that happens, but he's planning out, what do I want to do? What is this model going to look like? And based on that, what are some of the strategies I'm going to execute in the business? And do I want to build a big behemoth that's an asset, or do I want to get it super high performing on a cash flow basis, strip out that cash flows, pay off my house, invest in wealth creation assets, and just do that year on year on year, build a massive nest egg. And so I can then become more self-sufficient, self-financed, self-funded, retired, as opposed to relying on a big exit or having to rely on the government or the tax system or so on to be leveraging you up there. So, bit of a shorter episode today. I thought it was an important topic to put out there. I don't see it spoken about a lot. It's just a distinction that I see. It's understanding what you're doing now. Is it serving you? Is it playing into the longer term journey? But the longer term journey, looking at starting with the end in mind. Okay, so when I get to that point, am I going to get what I want? Or can I do something different along the journey? So when I get to that point, I'm still going to be in the position that I want. Remember, the business is there to serve you. You're not there to serve the business. And the business is there to generally fund a life or a lifestyle for you. Whether that's now or whether that's a future point in time. So just understand these distinctions. It might not change what you're doing, and for others, it might actually change, what you're doing. You might have understanding that, well, you know what, I probably need to stop blowing some of the cash that I take from the business on entertainment or I'll be more disciplined around, I know I'm taking a decent amount from the business and it just happens to disappear. you just need to be more disciplined around that. Okay, that's on you to be responsible and put some accountability and actions in place. A financial advisor can help you with it, or if you've got the self-discipline, then you can look to execute it yourself. So I hope these ideas have opened your mind to a few things, whether it's just reconfirm that you are on the right track, or it's going to give you some space to step back and reassess and decide where to from here. That's it. Turville TV, looking at, are you in a cash flow business or are you in an asset business? Join me next week, Thursday, 12 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time, talking all things business, finance, and investing. I'm Brad Turville, and I'll see you next week.